What a gorgeous day to head out for a garden tour. Hi, I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings, and today I'm at my home garden. It is August and everything is looking pretty nice, especially considering how much heat and humidity we've had this year in West Michigan. We're a zone 6A garden, and there has been plenty of 90 plus days with 60 to 70% humidity. And for as hot and humid as it is, you would think a lot of the plants would be not looking as great as they do. So I am excited that the gardens are still looking really nice, considering the beating I feel that they've had this summer. So let's go ahead and take a walk through the gardens. Some of the things we're going to be looking at today obviously would be hydrangeas. You can see this gorgeous firelight hydrangea here behind me, and it's just starting to put on its gorgeous pink color. Here in West Michigan, we're fortunate enough that we get cooler nights, and by having some cooler nights, that's what triggers the gorgeous pink color that we do see on our hardy hydrangeas. For those of you in the southern areas, you don't get cold enough at night to be able to enjoy the colors that we do get to see here in Michigan. We're going to also take a look at some hostas. The hosta garden is looking great right now. The annuals are still putting on a fantastic show of color, even with all the heat and humidity. We're going to also take a look at how my pots are doing in the front of my house that have the new Proven Winner annuals for 2026. There's a lot to see in the tour today, so stick with me and let's go ahead and walk through the gardens. We're going to start today's tour off in one of the most beautiful areas of my garden right now. And this is actually our butterfly garden. So this originally was an area where when my kids were little, we had their swing set and sandbox here. But as they began to outgrow that, we removed it and created this butterfly garden. So at the time, my daughter was old enough not to be playing in a swing set and sandbox anymore. And when we were creating this space, she said, you know what, Mom, let's create a butterfly garden. So we did just that. So a lot of the plants in this garden are specifically designed for butterflies and pollinators, but you also notice we have some really vibrant shrubs in here as well, because I wanted some big statement pieces in this area to really stand out. So what do we have in this butterfly garden? We have coneflowers or echinacea. A lot of different echinacea. I love planting echinacea in groupings using all the different colors. This was planted probably 15 or so years ago, maybe 12 years ago. And when we started off, this was a kaleidoscope of color of coneflowers. But you can see over time, some of the whites and the yellows and the oranges went away. And now we've got mostly just the red and the pink coneflowers. The nice thing is butterflies don't discriminate. They love any kind of plant that is a pollinator plant. We've got a tall phlox in here, and I like that because it just adds a little bit of height, gets some of that color up and off the ground. And that's a lot of times when we're planting gardens is how can you stagger the plants to have some tall ones, some medium ones, and then some shorter ones up in the front. We have two Bobo hydrangeas in here, and these are very happy specimens of Bobo hydrangea. Typically, they would say they get about 3 to 4 foot tall and wide, but our Bobos are about 5 foot tall. So definitely loving life in the area that they're planted in. The middle area, like this strip here in our yard that I'm standing in right now, kind of right through the middle here, is a little bit more of a muck-based soil. So it's very nutrient rich, and I think that's why the plants in this area really do well and thrive. The rest of the soil in our garden is all topsoil, so we are fortunate that we have good growing soil for all of our gardens. We don't struggle with any clay in our garden, which is a blessing. We've got a butterfly bush here. This is the Miss Molly. So this one here, we were a little bit late to trim it back. So we let it flush out in the spring to see where the dead would be and where the new growth was coming from. And for butterfly bushes for us in West Michigan, zone 6A, typically they come back from the ground. So this one did just that. So we had to remove all of the old twigs from last year and let this sprout from the ground. So it's just starting now to put on a little bit of its gorgeous butterfly bush blooms. This bed is lined with white sun patiens, and I've done this for almost every year since we've had this garden space. There was one year I tried planting, I think I put purple or something in here, or lavender, and I just was not as happy with how it looked. I love how this white looks at night. It makes this garden space, I'm going to say, glow. And I don't literally mean glow, but it adds a bright splash of color in the night sky. On the side, we also have a bunch of cone flowers. That was kind of in the design. We put these little fences here to keep the rabbits out and to just have little pockets of cone flowers in this garden. This is a Weigela. This is the Sonic Bloom Pink. It was recently trimmed. Otherwise, this would be blooming again. This plant can bloom up to 3 times a season. It blooms on the new growth, and it is a reblooming Weigela. It's very big, so this is one that I would love to trim back to about 3 foot. In the fall, we would do that. So we'll see if we end up getting time to do it or not. Some of the other plants we have in here, we got a little bit of white wand still putting out a little color. Some spigula in there, that beautiful red. I love those spigula for the hummingbirds. We put the begonia, the Surefire Cordial Cherry Begonia, in our pot this year, and it's doing really nice. I love that red flower with the blue pot, and then the reason is with the white sun patience and the white hydrangea in the background there, it kind of gave this little area of the garden a nice patriotic feel. And the only thing these things get watered with is if and when the underground sprinkling hits them, any water that's going into the pot is what they're getting watered with. We're not coming out here with a watering can or anything to water them. So it's been a dry summer. So whatever the sprinkler has given them has been sufficient enough for them to look the way they do. We've got more coneflower and tall phlox. We also got some hardy hibiscus growing in there. This is kind of I'm gonna say a messy garden, meaning like it's just, everything's not just nice and tidy. It's kind of all kind of a little bit wild and growing into each other. And I'm okay with that because I think especially for pollinator gardens and such, it's just, I feel like that natural look is a little bit more desired than a well-maintained garden space. I'm not saying a maintained garden space is bad, but I do like the little bit of wild intermingling that's going on in this garden. These coneflowers here, we did start off with planting a few, and what we're seeing now are just seedlings off of the original plants that were planted in there. They're a much taller variety than the originals, which I guess there's a few little ones down there. But these are going to be more your native coneflowers in this space. We've got the hardy hibiscus, huge dinner plate size blooms. The one bummer though with hibiscus is that the Japanese beetles do tend to like them. And so you're seeing a lot of holes in the leaves, and that's from the Japanese beetles. That doesn't bother me because from a distance I don't see it. All I'm seeing is the gorgeous dinner plate size blooms. The hydrangea is the Firelight hydrangea, and it is starting to put on its gorgeous fiery pink bloom. So this is, I don't know, I think this is probably one of the favorite, well, I just said Bobo was my favorite, I think. We have a lot of Bobo hydrangea planted because it's compact, but for color, I like the Firelight hydrangea. It is just so gorgeous. And it's just starting to take on its pink coloration. So when the blooms emerge, they emerge white. And then as the summer goes on, they pinken up. Eventually, these blooms are going to be a solid magenta color. So I can't wait until they get to that point. But it's also fun to watch the transition as it's happening in the garden. This plant is about 8 foot tall and 8 foot wide. So definitely a big one that you want to make sure that you have adequate room in your garden for it. The next little spot in the garden we're going to head over to is the hosta garden. So we have shade until about, let's see, it's almost noon right now, and we'll probably have shade until about 1 or 2 when we start getting the sunlight. So this is the shadiest part in our garden, and we do have a lot of kind of, I'm going to call them scruffy, scrappy trees here. Most of them are maple trees, although we've got a few scruffy pine trees too. Those are on our neighbor's property, and something is killing them. They're starting to die off. So hopefully we'll still have shade for a few years yet, but I'm not sure at the rate those trees are going, they could be dead in a couple years. But for now, they're providing the shade that is needed for this area of the garden. And I know those of you who've watched my videos, a lot of you comment on this shade garden and you love the hostas. So in this area, well, we have Aurelia Sun King, which is the bright green one you're seeing in the background there. But we have a lot of different hostas. We've got blues and greens and chartreuses and whites and big hostas, small hostas, strappy leaf, big plump leaf. A lot of different textures that we use in this area. And I think by doing that, it helps each individual hosta just be more predominant. Like if you're planting a bunch of greens together, they're just going to all seem green. But when you plant different colors and textures together, it makes each and individual one just stand out just a little bit more. So gorgeous color here in the darker shady areas of the garden. One thing I'm noticing that I hadn't noticed before is there's a walnut tree here, and something is going on, and it might just be that it's so heavy with walnuts that it's draping and touching the ground right now. Hopefully that doesn't break that branch off, but those walnuts must have quite a bit of weight on them that it's just weighing that tree down. The things you watch and see when you're out even exploring your own garden spaces. Gorgeous fern there. That's another great plant to add into shadier areas of the garden. Great texture. I love the texture of ferns. Along the back of the garden, we have it lined with sun patiens. I think this is the hot pink color. And this is a plant that every year for the last several years we plant here. And that's because it draws your eye back to the back of the garden. There's a lot of green going on. There is some flower color, but because most of this is more of a shade type area with shade plants, there's not a lot of really big splashes of color. So by planting that sun patient row, it just draws your eye back here to the garden and helps kind of frame it in a way. In the spring, there's bleeding heart. There's some grasses in here, hellebore, so that gives us our spring color. And in the summer, most of the color here is just foliage color from the hostas. A little bit of flower color from the hostas as well. There's some Bernera in there, which is great foliage interest, but in the spring has little blue flowers. We have an Alstroemeria that just is struggling to survive for the last 20 years, but it just keeps rewarding us with those gorgeous pink blooms. We have a stilbe in this bed. The stilbe's done blooming now, but still it adds some interesting texture even with the spent blooms. There was a lot of heuchera or corbels in this garden at one time. That was prior to us putting underground sprinkling in. Once we put the underground sprinkling in, it was too much water for those plants and they just didn't thrive like they did when it was a drier growing condition. So if you have heuchera and they don't seem to be doing good, check your water and see, are you maybe overwatering, or is it in too moist of location for heuchera? They prefer to be in a more drier area. Off in the distance there is a Ligularia blooming. I believe that's the Ligularia tractor seat. And then the blooms are just stretching to the most sun they can have, which is towards the grass. But that is quite a massive splash of color from the blooms there on the Ligularia tractor seat. These hydrangeas here are also bobo, and you'll notice they are significantly smaller than any of the other bobos we've seen in the video so far. These are only about 2.5 foot tall. Now it's because they don't get as much sunlight as the others, so that does kind of help keep them just a little bit smaller. And this is also a good place to say, you know, if you have hardy hydrangeas, they can grow in full sun, especially for us in the north. But if you do plant them in a part shade location, they'll still bloom and they'll still grow. They just won't get as tall. Another thing to point out is if you are in the south, most hardy hydrangeas are recommended for more of a part shade location. A few tall phlox growing there, not as tall as what they'd be is if they were in the sun, but at least it's adding just a little bit of a splash of color. We've got some allium here just starting to wake up a little bit and put on a bloom. They're going to only get more vibrant as they continue to open. A little bit of sedum there showing some color as well. Some more tall phlox there in the background. More astilbes and hostas. As we make our way just past this point, we're going to open it up to a little bit more sun. So the plants that we have in these next areas are going to be plants that can handle more sun than those that we just saw in the shade area. This here is actually a patch of daylilies. It is done blooming now, although they were blooming in the last video, and it was just gorgeous. A mass of beautiful daylily color. Nephophia, putting on a little bit of bloom there. You'll also notice we changed the colors of the sun patient just to kind of break it up a little bit. Around the pond area, we've got the purple stripe. Those are doing really well. In the back there's a creek on the far side of the top of the flower bed. And so on that back side there, we just really kind of fill it with ferns and things that don't need a lot of attention. You can see those ferns are starting to make their way up into the flower bed more. And at this point, they're almost starting to take over this waterfall, which we haven't run in years, just because the pump's broken and we can't get to the pump anymore. So we just use it as kind of a little bit of character or added interest in this area of the garden. And then too, there's a lot of frogs in here. As I'm sitting here, I'm hearing them croaking. And let's see, do you see the frog? There's one in there hiding underneath all of that scum. So it is fun to listen to the frogs as well as they're back here making their noises in the evening. To kind of create a border between our yard and our neighbor, we planted a huge hedge of limelight hydrangeas, and they're just kind of tucked back in the corner there too. They get fairly neglected. Everything back there gets fairly neglected because there's no water back there, and it's just kind of a filler, just to fill in the space. And flowers are better than weeds, so we try to just jam as many things back there as we can and just try to snuff out any weeds that might try to appear. A few hibiscus in this area as well. And again, you'll notice the leaves are all very lacy looking, and that again is from Japanese beetle damage. Although that does affect the leaves, you can see it doesn't affect the flowers. The flowers are still blooming beautifully and have nice full blooms that aren't all chewed up. The incredible hydrangea, oh man, this plant just does not stop growing. A few years ago, we came through and pulled out all of they're not seedlings, but if the branch touches the ground, it'll start a new plant. So we went and pulled all of those new plants out and got it back to the main original plant. And it's already, again, it's really spreading and filling in this space. So this is a good thing if you want a space filler, the incredible hydrangea, but you can keep it more under control as well. If you have it just as more of a specimen plant, you can keep it in check and to the original size it started off as. Another Bobo hydrangea here. As I said, we went Bobo crazy when Bobo was introduced because it was such a great smaller plant at the time. Now, if I was looking for a small plant, I would do the Firelight Tidbit, which is only about 2.5 foot, 3 foot tall. So a much smaller plant, and it is loaded with blooms, even for that small size of the plant. Here's some Allium Millennium blooming, and this is getting more sun than the ones we just passed, so they are further along with their bloom color. I love allium because it is a pollinator magnet. The butterflies love allium, as do the bumblebees and such, but it's a great plant to plant in mass that creates just an amazing splash of color. Got a few more hibiscus kind of just tucked in any little place we could find, and that's because those big blooms are just so gorgeous and stand out so beautifully in the garden. Got some more phlox blooming there. The clematis wall is pretty much done blooming. There's still a few raguchi on here. Raguchi is a bell-shaped bloom. Let me see if I can find some. They're not looking real great right now, though. This raguchi plant is filled with powdery mildew, which can happen, especially to raguchi. But like I said, it's been hot and humid, so the humidity has really kind of affected the plant. So what can you do if this is what's happening to your plant? Eventually, it's going to probably not look great. I would recommend just trimming it back, and it'll grow new growth and be fresh and clean again. It may not bloom anymore this year, obviously, but you can trim off that foliage and it'll come back fresh either later on in the season or certainly for next year. A few little sedum in this area here. Wine and Roses Weigela, even though it's not blooming, it's a spring bloomer. It's got great foliage, and foliage is important for this time of year. Like, you've got your flowers, and then it's also nice to have that foliage interest as well. Some sedum and some nice white tall phlox there. We've also got our limelight hydrangea, putting on a fantastic show of color. This limelight hydrangea is about 8 or 9 foot tall. Usually about every 3 years, we'll trim it back to about 3 foot. And that sounds drastic and scary to do, but the plant really appreciates it when we trim it back. And we've probably done that 3 or 4 times now. And obviously the plant is still here, so it hasn't died. That is one thing I do like to point out to people is don't be afraid to trim. If you do not like the looks of your plant, it has ugly habit, it's too big, it's just something that's not making you happy, trim it back. That will, make you stop grumbling about it. And 2 things can happen. 1, it can grow back beautifully like you're seeing here, and then you're just really excited. Or 2, you kill it, and that just leaves you opportunity to plant something new, something that you won't be grumbling about. So that is my little tip for trimming. Don't be afraid to do it. Here's another incredible hydrangea, and you can see how this one is more well behaved in this space. It's just a singular hydrangea. There's not a lot of competition going on around it, and this is more what you would expect if you were planting that incredible hydrangea, this size of a plant. It's a little bit past its prime right now, so the flowers aren't fresh and white. That was a few weeks ago. But as far as the habit and the size of the plant, this is what you can expect with the hydrangea. Incredible. Another Rose of Sharon there, or Hardy hibiscus, however it is that you're most familiar with calling it. We're going to head to the back of the house. There's not a lot really standing out at this point. There's a purple bloom, that's a lythrum. A lot of people are going to yell at me for having that in my garden because it's an invasive species. I have 2 of these in my garden. They've been in here for over 15 years, and I still have 2 of them in my garden. So they're definitely not taking over. I like how they look, and if there's something you like in your garden, be conscious of what it can do, but don't let people tell you you can't do something, especially if it's something that you like. So this is something I like. It's staying well behaved where I have it, and it brings me joy. It brings me memories of my grandpa who had them in his garden as well. The circle garden's looking good with the limelight hydrangea. This is a standard, meaning we have it trained into tree form, and that baby is gorgeous. It's circled by the Atlas roses, which have cycled and bloomed a few times throughout the summer. We also have the My Monet Wagila and the Lilac Bloomerang Dwarf Purple Lilac. This was recently trimmed, so we're not getting a lot of rebloom on it. But again, sometimes you have to trim things to keep them in size check for the area that you're planting them in. And then this bed is bordered with red sun patience. And the reason is I like the red and the orange together. I think that looks nice. And I like how the red sun patient pulls out the red in that Wagila. It just kind of accents it, and they're very complementary together. Up against the back window there, we have little firelight, and that's doing nice, about 4 foot tall, starting to turn pink. Along the side of the house, we've got more bobo. So we're going to take the sidewalk here and head up to the front to show you those new varieties. Invincible Spirit Blush done blooming. 3 bobos lining the pathway up. Quick Fire with its gorgeous pink blooms. Quick Fire has been discontinued, but you could find another variety like Quick Fire Fab if you're loving that early pink bloom color in the garden. And now we're going to talk about new plant varieties for 2026. If you're still watching, thank you. We've got Bobo hydrangea in front of the house. You can see how they're kind of that nice size to be a foundation planting. So next year, new variety, Supertunia Cool Jazz, a lighter version of Jazzberry. And one thing we're having is rabbits. Rabbits are eating the petunias. This is the first year we had that. It's a little disappointing, but we're not doing much about it because I want to see basically how they respond to what the rabbits are doing. So they'll be pulled out in probably 3 weeks anyways. So I just want to see what they do. I had done a video a few weeks back on these planters where we had trimmed them back. 2 weeks we came back, they were nicely mounded, a few blooms. 3 weeks they were in full flower, and by week 4, 5, this is what they look like again. They flopped open. These are the Super Kale petunias. This is the first year we've planted them, and to say I'm not super happy with how they're performing is an understatement. Now, these maybe would be better in the ground. These are well suited for those in the south. So if you're a southern grower and have super kales, I'd love to know your experience with them, because for me in the north, I'm not impressed. The flowers are gorgeous, but this is what I don't like about it. They split wide open and just don't look like a full ball of color. So I have to trim them like almost every 4 weeks, let them reflush out to have gorgeous flower color. Who knows, maybe it's just me, but I'd love to know your experience. So more of that cool jazz. One thing I'm noticing with the flowers, with the rabbits eating them, is they're kind of pruning it for me, but it is putting on more buds. So they're eating that foliage, but it's kind of doing a little, I don't know, maintenance in a way, and more buds are coming. So it will put on more flowers because of what they're doing, but it just makes it look very bare around the edge of the sidewalk there. So the new varieties for 2026 in my front containers, there are definitely some that are outperforming others. And this is definitely something that I know will happen, and it's always fun to see which ones are going to be the ones that outperform the rest. So here is the Supertunia Mini Vista Pink Cloud. Love it. Very aggressive plant. You can see that it is doing fantastic in the planter. Also, the new sweet potato vine, it's doing fantastic. It's not overly aggressive. Now, it's August, so you would expect it to have, lots going on, but it's very appropriately aggressive. It's filled out nicely. It hasn't taken over the whole pot, and I'm very pleased with the vigor of this plant. It is done very well. There's the Super Bells Pink Grapefruit, and these are doing really well. A lot of times Super Bells have a hard time hanging out with petunias because petunias can be more aggressive, but these are doing really nicely. We're going to show you the James Britannia on the other pot because it's a little bit better. Heading across here, you can see how that James Britannia is just really doing great. This was a plant that was a wild card for me. I didn't know what it was going to do. I honestly thought it was going to get drowned out and eaten alive by everything else, but it is holding its own and has really put on a very beautiful show of color. More of that pink cloud, doing great. You can see the sweet potato vine also looking very nice. Pink cloud just continues to go around. And then more of the magic grapefruit, Super Bells. One thing we're noticing with the magic grapefruit is it does have different colorations, as you're seeing here in the picture. But depending on if it's hotter or if it's cooler, you're going to see more pink or more yellow. In the more heat, we're seeing more yellow. In the cooler temperatures, it was showing more pink. So that's something I think that's worth noting with that plant. All in all, though, I've been very happy with how these planters have turned out this year. And my favorite are the pink grapefruit, the pink cloud, and then the cool jazz Supertunias. And I think those are going to be the ones that are going to be the most popular plants from the new introductions for 2026. If you have any questions or comments on these new plant varieties, we're going to actually be selling these for the 2026 season. They'll be listed online in December where you can pre-order. But if you have questions on my thoughts on any of them, just leave me a note below. Thank you for walking through the gardens with me today. I hope that there was some plants here that maybe were new to you or something that you said, man, I would really love to have that in my garden. If you're new to our channel, we welcome you to subscribe. And if you're new and don't know what Garden Crossings is a mail order company. We ship plants all over the United States. And we also have a retail garden center located in Zeeland, Michigan. So we'd love to have you stop out and visit us sometime, either in person or online. Thanks for watching. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.